Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of Handlebar ASMR. Before I get started today, I'd like to say, take a moment to check down in the description of this video and you'll see a link to my non-ASMR channel, which is That Average Joe, without all the whispering, and it kind of gives a more me look at videos and everything. And also right now, while we're in this quarantine, me and my best buddy that is quarantining with me has like a little fun channel where we talk about stuff and do silly videos. So if you are interested, check the description of the video and give it a try. Now on to the real meat today. Today I'm actually going to go over my top 5 movies that I suggest watching during quarantine. Now, I actually added an honorable mention because I just figured it would be unfair to mention T2 Judgment Day, which is my honorable mention. T2 Judgment Day, which is Terminator 2, is a sequel to the sci-fi action thriller that made Arnold Schwarzenegger an A-list Hollywood name. James Cameron upped everything with T2, and the special effects are absolutely amazing still to this day. It's about Sarah Connor, who is still played by Linda Hamilton. She comes back as Sarah Connor, and she now has a son from the man from the original Terminator, and he's gonna grow up to be John Connor, who is the leader of the Resistance. Well, of course, the future sends back a T-1000 model, which is a liquid metal model of the Terminator, played by Robert Patrick, who is out to kill John Connor so that he doesn't fulfill his destiny. And the T-800 comes back, which is Arnold Schwarzenegger, to defend and protect the boy. Now, the reason that T2 Judgment Day isn't in my top 5 is because technically T2 Judgment Day is a movie about them stopping or trying to stop the apocalypse rather than living in a post-apocalyptic world. This has always been, it's an amazing movie. The special effects actually stand out even more now that some of the later Terminators have come out. And the last Terminator, which was actually a sequel to T2, it really showed just how good the special effects were, because the CGI in that movie looked very cartoony in places, and it was very, very easy to tell what had been added in and everything like that. So I think to this day, Terminator 2 still stands out as like a major accomplishment in special effects. And not only that, it's a very good movie, so it's up there. I had to mention it, even though in my mind it's not necessarily a end of the world movie. But that'll get me to my number 5, which is definitely an end of the world movie, and that's 28 Days Later. After breaking into the primate research facility, a group of animal rights activists discover caged chimps chained up before banks of screens displaying horrifying violent images. Ignoring the warnings of a terrified researcher who maintains that the chimps are infected, they begin to free the animals and are immediately subjected to a bloody attack from the enraged creatures. 28 days later, cycle courier Jim awakes from a coma in a deserted intensive care unit in London hospital. He wanders out into a church where he finds that Britain has been overrun by victims of a bloodborne virus called Rage, who turns people into frenzied murderers. Now, the big thing about 28 Days Later is it is our introduction into these fast zombies. I know most of everyone around my age grew up on the George Romero slow zombies, and so all of us kind of was like, bring the zombie apocalypse gloves on. I could handle this. You know, you get slow moving zombies. You crawl up on a rooftop. You peg them with a rifle or something, and they don't seem as scary. It's more the people that you gotta worry about. But when these zombies came, well, rage infected people, they were scary. They were running at you, and they wanted nothing but to rip you apart, and you knew that the game had changed. It was a lot scarier. It really brought back a lot of the scare to zombie movies, for me at least. The next movie it really hits a lot of points right now, especially during the quarantine that we're going through, and that's a movie called Right at Your Door. After multiple dirty bombs are detonated, spreading deadly toxic ash across Los Angeles, Brad inadvertently quarantines his wife Lexi outside of their home by safely sealing himself inside. With the city under siege and a martial law in effect, Brad and Lexi struggle to survive with few supplies, limited time, and no information, all while separated by thin doors and thinner sheets of plastic. When help finally does arrive, it appears to be anything but. The thing about this movie is the wife goes to work, the husband's at home, there's a dirty bomb attack, and this all happens in the first setup of the movie, so it's not really a spoiler. But the whole movie revolves around he quarantines himself in, like they say, and his wife returns, and he can't let her in without bringing in this dirty bomb. The effects of it into the house. And so it kind of asks the questions, you know, how far would you go for love? What would you do if your loved one was in a situation like this? And often when I would see the pictures of people visiting, like older people in nursing homes, and talking to them through windows, or, you know, people only being able to talk to each other via the web and everything, it really made me think of this movie a lot. And so I put it on my top. It's number 4 on my top 5. So it's number 3 would be Mad Max Fury Road. Now, Mad Max is probably the most mainstream movie I have on this list, besides maybe Terminator 2, but it is an apocalyptic story set in a stark desert landscape where humanity is broken and everyone is fighting for necessities of life. 2 rebels are on the run who just might be able to restore order. There's Max, a man of action and a man of few words, and who seeks peace of mind following the loss of his wife and child after the aftermath of the chaos, and Furiosa, a woman of action and a woman who believes her path to survival may be achieved if she can make it across the desert back to her childhood homeland. Mad Max I just love this movie. It is larger than life characters. It's a car chase from beginning to end. Every character in it is almost like their own, like, star character, and the landscapes, the dialogue, everything about this movie I really like. We liked it so much that for Dragon Con one year, we actually did, rather than having Immortan Joe and his wives, we done a gender number 2 movie, which is, it's technically a tie, but it's not really a tie because they are the same movie. There's just, one is the Dawn of the Dead remake and the Dawn of the Dead original. So, when a mysterious virus turns people into mindless, flesh-eating zombies, a handful of survivors hold up inside a shopping mall and wage a desperate last stand to stay alive and stay human. Of course, the George A. Romero version had the slow-moving zombies and everything, and really focused more on the humanity side of the people surviving the zombie apocalypse. And Romero always had undertones of a bigger lesson in his movies, whereas, and it's great, like, it's a wonderful movie. The first time I ever saw it, I fell in love with it. It's probably my favorite out of all of Romero's movies. And when the remake came out, they added these fast-moving zombies that we got from 28 Days Later into this movie, and it turned it into a pretty much like an action horror movie. And although it's very much the same premise as the original Dawn of the Dead, the people go, they stay inside a shopping mall and everything like that, it definitely has more action-y elements, but I don't think it really detracts, so I kind of put the movies on the same level as each other. Romero's is a classic, and I know I'll get back talk for saying that the Dawn of the Dead remake is as good, but for reasons I really do enjoy it just as much as the original Dawn of the Dead. And this brings me to my final movie on my list, and this is a must-see movie that a lot of people probably have not seen. And then when I went back and kind of watched Chernobyl this last year, the first thing that came to my mind was Threads. Threads was originally produced by the BBC, and it is a shattering speculative tale on the onset of World War III and the horrors of post-apocalyptic society that struggles for survival. The film takes place in the ruins of Sheffield, a British working-class town. Despite the fact that the world seems to be falling apart all around them, a young couple intend to go ahead with their upcoming wedding. As the date draws near, however, simmering international tensions soon erupt into a global thermonuclear war. In the devastation that follows, the apocalyptic erosion of society sends mankind hurtling back hundreds of years into an age where famine, strife, pestilence, and death wash over the land like an unrelenting flood of venomous bile. The central theme of the film seems to be that the adage goes, life goes on, just isn't good enough in a world doomed to a slow death by radiation. Without resorting to shock or sensationalism, this one makes the day after and the testament look like kid stuff. Threads is a very good movie. It is not a feel-good movie. It's a very interesting look, and it really does ask the question, what's the point if the world is so terrible after something like that? Most movies focused on the hope of humanity after a movie, and Thread really is like, it just gives you this very direct, unflinching look of what life would probably be like after a nuclear attack and surviving in a world where you're living with the fallout, and it is absolutely terrifying. So I highly recommend this one. Like I said, it's not a feel-good movie, but Chernobyl was not a feel-good show. When you watched it, it was really scary because, one, it actually happened, and although this one is speculative, you can see where they really over sensationalized stuff. It just gives you a very grim, very dark look of what the future could be if we ever use these nuclear bombs on each other. So, that's my top 5 and one honorable mention to watch during this quarantine of end of the world movies. I hope you enjoyed this episode, and if you did, take just 1 second and give it a like, and better yet, give me a subscribe if you like my channel. I really appreciate that, and I see each and every one of you that do. So, I hope to see you again from Handlebar ASMR.
Subscribe.
Subscribe.